Parents of teens. What's the biggest I can't believe they just did that moment? Hey guys! Tonight we are diving headfirst into the mysterious, magical, mildly maddening world of teenagers and those moments when you stare at your child, jaw slack, brain short-circuiting, and think, there's no way this came from my gene pool. You know the kind of moment I'm talking about, kind where logic takes a lunch break and you're left blinking at your teen, wondering if they've been possessed by the spirit of a sitcom character with zero impulse control. Now, picture this. You're halfway through your morning coffee, scrolling through emails with one eye still stuck in dreamland, when your phone buzzes with a suspiciously enthusiastic notification from your mobile provider. You've exceeded your international data limit. Cue the Scooby-Doo head tilt. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. The story begins with something deceptively small, a phone bill. You tap the notification, mildly annoyed, expecting maybe $20 over. Instead, you see a number that looks more like the GDP of a small island nation. 3 digits. Maybe for if the decimal is playing tricks. You clutch your chest like you're about to reenact a soap opera feint. It's not just extra data. Your teen has apparently facetimed their friend while live-streaming a virtual concert in France. At full resolution. For 5 hours. You stomp down the hall like a one-person parade of doom. Phone in hand. Your teen, bless their oblivious heart, is lounging on their bed, headphones in, giggling at some meme. You yank a single AirPod out, cue the teenage gasp of betrayal. What did you do? You ask through gritted teeth. Their eyes widen not in guilt, but confusion. Oh, you mean the Ariana Grande thing? It was totally worth it, they say, as if that justifies the financial devastation now nesting in your bank account. This is the moment it hits you like a Roman chariot. Raising teens is less like shepherding a child toward adulthood and more like managing an intern with zero life experience and unearned confidence. Historically speaking, adolescence hasn't always existed as a distinct phase. In ancient Sparta, for example, the moment a boy turned 7, he was yanked from home and tossed into military training, expected to toughen up fast. No Fortnite, number WIFE spears and social Darwinism. Makes your teenager's TikTok obsession look downright wholesome. Meanwhile, your own teen is now explaining with suspicious eloquence, this was actually educational because the concert was culturally enriching. You stare. They stare. You stare harder. Fringe historians suggest teenagers develop their distinct behavioral quirks only once societies gave them prolonged education and delayed responsibility. A modern luxury. They argue. A luxury your wallet is currently regretting. Later, as you call the phone company and beg for mercy, your teen waltzes in with a smoothie and says, "Can we upgrade to the unlimited international plan? It just makes more sense long term." You have to pause, breathe, decide whether this is a teachable moment or the start of your villain origin story. But deep down, underneath the rising blood pressure and financial shock, there's a spark of awe. Your kid just broke a system with the casual flair of a hacker in an 80s movie. It's chaotic brilliance. Infuriating. Yes, but also weirdly impressive. Like watching a raccoon solve a puzzle box. Historians still argue whether teenage rebellion is a biological inevitability or a cultural creation. Either way, you're living it in high definition. The evening ends with you poring over the bill again, highlighting every international minute like it's a crime scene. Your teen walks past, pats your shoulder, and mutters, "Next time, I'll use Wi-Fi. Next time." The next time comes faster than expected and, naturally, it has nothing to do with phone bills. It starts with a suspicious quiet. You know the kind. The one that settles in like fog before something breaks. It's Saturday afternoon. You're trying to fix a wobbly cabinet door while mentally triaging your to-do list. The house, unusually, is silent. Too silent. No thumps. No music. No sarcastic comments wafting down the stairs. You check the WIF is still online, so your teen hasn't run away in protest. But that's when you hear it, a soft rhythmic tapping, like someone tiptoeing in combat boots. You follow it up to the attic, expecting maybe an illicit snack stash or a hidden game controller. What you find instead is your child, seated like a monk, surrounded by candles, conducting a full-blown seance. No joke, a seance, with a homemade Ouija board and everything. They look up, startled, not embarrassed, but deeply irritated that you've interrupted something important. Dad, I'm in the middle of channeling Lady Diana. There's a beat of silence in your brain, during which you question every parenting decision you've ever made. Then you notice the incense. It smells like sandalwood and regret. Apparently, your teen and their friends, yes, there are two others on FaceTime, are conducting a historically accurate spiritual experiment. Something they read about in a conspiracy Reddit thread cross-referenced with a TikTok from a girl wearing 17 rings and talking about ley lines. The room is dim. Someone's playing Enya through a Bluetooth speaker, and you're standing there trying not to laugh or scream. Here's where the history kicks in. Did you know that during the Victorian era, seances were considered high society entertainment? Even Mary Todd Lincoln famously hosted them in the White House, trying to contact her dead son. Spiritualism swept through the 1800s like a social trend with scented gloves. It wasn't just ghosts, it was ghost fashion. Your teen explains this with scholarly fervor. They cite multiple obscure sources, including a podcast run by two sisters who both claim to be reincarnated Mesopotamian priestesses. One of the friends on FaceTime nods solemnly, then asks, "Did she respond yet?" You're torn between wanting to confiscate their phone and handing them a PhD. Okay, you say slowly. And what if, just hypothetically, Princess D answers and tells you to clean your room? They roll their eyes. She wouldn't say that. She was elegant. Either way, it's alive and well in your attic. Later, you find a note taped to the fridge, in delicate handwriting. It reads, "Gone to gather crystals for clarity. Back before curfew. You don't know whether to ground them or ask if they'll do your horoscope next." That night, you pour a glass of wine and Google, "Can teens be possessed by Pinterest?" No clear answers. But you do stumble upon an article suggesting that today's kids, swamped with digital chaos, turn to mysticism as a way to reclaim control. That's oddly comforting. Until you remember they tried to summon Princess D during daylight hours with a Sharpie-drawn Ouija board made from a pizza box. You sigh. But also, you're kind of impressed. Again, the next day, you catch them muttering to a crystal while making eggs, whispering something about cleansing negative parent energy. You smile, then unplug the toaster just in case the ghost of Marie Antoinette wants toast. There's a rule of thumb in parenting teens: the second you think you've seen it all, you haven't. So when your kid's school calls during lunch hour, your stomach drops a little. It's not full-on DEFCON mode yet, but there's something about the tone in the secretary's voice somewhere between "everything's fine" and "you might want to sit down." You step outside the office with your half-eaten burrito in hand and prepare for whatever version of chaos this might be. Here's what you're told. Your child has started a business inside school, without permission, selling custom forgery services. Yes, forgeries. As in, your teenager is signing parental signatures for other students in permission slips, test retakes, even a fake orthodontist excuse that somehow involved the phrase "emergency incisor trauma." Apparently, they charge per pen stroke. A full signature with convincing loops? $5. Just initials? 2. Bulk discounts for frequent flyers. There's a whole pricing tier. You ask the vice principal, "Wait, did they print business cards?" And she says, with the resigned tone of someone who's seen too much, "Worse, they made a QR code." You're not sure whether to ground your kid or hire them. When you confront them at home, their defense is airtight. "No one was getting hurt. I was just solving a market inefficiency." They cite historical precedent. Yes, historical precedent. During World War II, they explain, people forged documents all the time to escape enemy territory. Sometimes it was the only way to survive. They then go on to describe Operation Mincemeat, a real British intelligence plot where fake papers were planted on a corpse to deceive the Nazis. So really, they conclude proudly, "I'm just carrying on that tradition." You blink. They smile. You blink again. Historians still argue whether forgery is more an art form or a moral failure. And right now you'd lean toward creative felony. But wow, the entrepreneurial spirit. They even show you the sample sheets. They've practiced on dozens of your signature in different moods. Casual, annoyed, over-caffeinated. Some of them are scarily good. And while you're admiring grudgingly their attention to detail, you also realize they've been studying you, watching the curve of your letters, the pressure of the pen, the little flick at the end of your Y. It's weirdly touching, in a deeply felonious way. Naturally, consequences follow. The school lets them off with a warning and community service as specifically scrubbing the gum wall behind the gym, which has likely existed since Eisenhower was in office. You suggest they use this time to reflect. They suggest using it to expand into cleaning services with forged invoices. You say no, flatly, but your tone might contain just a whisper of admiration. Still, it opens the floodgates. You start noticing little genius-level transgressions everywhere. They reprogram the smart thermostat to say welcome, Your Royal Majesty, when you walk in. They create a fake email chain between two fictional teachers debating whether they're gifted. They rewrite the Alexa wake word to respond only to Latin phrases. One night, during dinner, they say offhandedly, "If I were a spy, you'd never know it. You choke on your mashed potatoes." It makes you wonder, has it always been like this? Have teens always been this sneakily, dangerously clever? You dig a little and discover a case from 1415 where a teenage scribe in Paris forged official church indulgences to impress a girl. They were caught because the Latin grammar was too perfect. So maybe this isn't new. Maybe every generation raises at least one teen who could run a successful crime ring from their locker. The next weekend, you check their backpack. Inside, textbooks, gum wrappers, a calculator, and a hand-drawn map of your neighborhood, complete with escape routes and a note that says, "Test run complete. No one noticed." You take a deep breath, then lock up your checkbook and your passport. Later, as they sleep, you sit outside their room with a glass of water and a strange swirl of emotions. Pride, panic, respect, and a tiny sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll grow up to outsmart someone else for a living. You figure you've seen the peak, that there's nowhere higher to climb on the Mount Everest of what did my teen just do. You are wrong, because one afternoon, while unloading groceries, you find your teen in the backyard, wearing a bathrobe, surrounded by candles, and delivering a heartfelt speech to wait for ITA line of plastic lawn flamingos. Nope, not a TikTok prank, not a school project. This is the first annual Flamingo Parliament, and your teen is the elected speaker of the Beak. They bow solemnly. You drop the bag of frozen peas. When asked, they explain this is about political discourse and emotional intelligence in decorative poultry. A pause. Also, I needed a place to practice public speaking. You're speechless. The flamingos, naturally, R2. As surreal as it is, the moment starts to thaw your brain. Because you get it sort of. You remember being 13 and pretending your stuffed animals had social hierarchies, or writing speeches in your mirror when no one was looking. So maybe this is just the modern version, but with more lawn ornaments and less dignity. That night, they hand you a printed agenda for the next session. Topics include how to reinvent P.E. Snacks should be tax deductible, and why adults should get recess. The paper is watermarked with a tiny flamingo in a judge's wig. You ask if they're okay. They reply, "I'm evolving." Historians still argue whether eccentricity is the soil from which genius grows or just where it hides. Either way, you start watching a little more closely. Because you're teen, they're clearly experimenting. Not just with flamingos, but identity. They wear a beret one day, a bucket hat the next. They try out new slang like slay and nid and call you bestie in a way that is both sweet and slightly condescending. You ask what happened to mom or dad and they shrug. Too mainstream. It's disorienting, but also kind of wonderful. Then comes the night you find them doing calculus. For fun, you freeze in the hallway, peeking in as they solve derivatives by hand, scribbling numbers across the same flamingo-printed stationery. There's no homework due, no test, just quiet self-imposed curiosity, like watching a squirrel read Nietzsche. Turns out, they got interested in math while researching chaos theory, yes, because of Jurassic Park. That led to fractals, which led to Mandelbrot sets, which led to an obsession with the idea that order emerges from mess. They say this while balancing a spoon on their nose. You try not to tear up. And yes, there's still chaos. They leave socks everywhere. They eat shredded cheese straight from the bag like it's trail mix. Their idea of cleaning the bathroom is running the faucet and whispering an apology to the mildew. But deep down, something's shifting, growing, like tectonic plates rumbling under the surface. Even if all you see is a teen who eats 6 toaster waffles in one sitting. A week later, they get into an argument with your brother at dinner. It's about Plato. Your teen has decided the allegory of the cave is flawed because some shadows are more interesting than reality. Your brother, who majored in philosophy and thinks he's still got it, tries to debate them. He loses. Spectacularly. They cite sources. They quote Bo Burnham. They deliver the closing line. Just because it's blurry doesn't mean it's not real with the gravity of someone who knows they just dropped a mic. You all sit there, blinking, as they calmly ask if anyone's going to finish the mashed potatoes. That's when it hits you. The true "I can't believe they just did that" moment. It's not the prank, not the fake business, not even the Parliament of Birds. It's this. The moment your child outgrows the version of them you had in your head. Not all at once, but in flashes. Like a glitch in the simulation. 1 second they're whining about doing laundry. The next they're dissecting modern ethics with the intensity of a grad student. It's weird. It's exhilarating. It's also, frankly, a little terrifying. You once read that in ancient Sparta, teenage boys were expected to live by their wit-stealing food, surviving alone in the wild, learning to deceive and adapt. It was called the Cryptia, and it was their version of a rite of passage. Today's teens, they have Instagram, Discord, and existential dread. Different tools, same storm. The next morning, you walk past your teen's room and catch them in mid-monologue, practicing something. Maybe a speech, maybe a YouTube video, maybe a TED Talk titled "Why Flamingos Understand Me." You don't interrupt. You just listen. And quietly, you start to believe that maybe, despite all the mess and mayhem, they're going to be okay. You think the universe might be winding down its chaos parade. that maybe your teen has hit their quota for unpredictable weirdness. But once again, the universe raises one eyebrow, mutters "hold my juice box," and hands your child a paintball gun. It starts with a vague, innocent-sounding phrase, "There's going to be a friendly neighborhood game." You assume they mean tag, maybe hide and seek. You forget, briefly, that teenagers are feral innovators fueled by hormones and monster energy. You return home on a Friday to find the kitchen whiteboard has been rebranded. It now reads, Operation Pancake Rebellion Command Center. Your teen, in full camo and war paint, is that eyeliner? Is mapping out strategy for a 12-person suburban siege involving super soakers, stealth missions, decoy Nerf bombs, and exactly one diplomatic hostage exchange. They've recruited 3 neighbors, 2 younger siblings, and a very confused pug named Sprinkles as their personal lookout. You ask if anyone cleared this with the HOA. They respond, history favors the bold. To be fair, history also favors utter chaos. The Great Emu War of 1932, yes. That happened saw Australia lose a battle against large, flightless birds armed only with legs and spite. Historians still argue whether it was a military embarrassment or an avian power move. Your kid's backyard campaign feels like a spiritual cousin to that event. The rebellion begins at 4:03 p.m. Precisely when you're on a Zoom call. You mute yourself just in time to hear a war cry for the Waffle Kingdom, followed by the unmistakable sound of pool noodles clashing. You find them later, lying in the yard, covered in orange paint and victorious. Sprinkles sits beside them like a battle-worn general. You sigh. You bring them a juice box. They nod solemnly. We lost Greg in the sprinkler ambush, but we will rebuild. And you laugh. You laugh until your ribs ache. Because what else can you do? Of course, not every surprise is this, harmless. One evening, you walk into the kitchen and freeze. Your teen is standing in front of the stove. There is smoke. There is what appears to be an exploded spaghetti squash. There is, somehow, glitter in the mashed potatoes. You say nothing. You just hold out your hand. They hand you a flash card. It reads, Experiment 7, Culinary Fusion Fail. You appreciate the accountability. You also eat cereal that night. The thing is, every time you think you've reached the edge of what they're capable of creatively, emotionally, recklessly, they do something quietly stunning. Like when you find them late one night, hunched over their desk, handwriting a letter to their friend whose dad just lost his job. It's not dramatic. No crying. No hashtags. Just quiet care. I thought they might want real mail. They say. Feels more present. You nod. Heart tight. Then, 2 days later, they go viral on TikTok for dramatically reading a breakup letter from the perspective of a haunted Roomba. It's their postmodern commentary on automated feelings. Apparently, the video has 47.0 likes. You don't know whether to ground them or get them a manager. You find yourself constantly pivoting. 1 foot in the past where they were 5. And giggling. And asking if ants have best friends and 1 foot stumbling toward their future. Where they might be anything. A comedian. A civil rights lawyer. An urban chicken farmer. All 3. There's no map for this. You learn to live in the little in-betweens. Like the way they still ask you to tuck them in on their worst days. Or how they secretly keep their childhood stuffed bunny under their pillow. Even while they argue about federal tax brackets over dinner. It reminds you of the Romans. Oddly enough, they believed in Janus, the god of beginnings and transition solis shown with 2 faces. One looking forward and one back. Teenagers, they are Janus, constantly switching from wise philosopher to chaos goblin in seconds. One night, as you're half asleep, you hear music drifting from their room. You creep close to listen. It's not punk or EDM. It's a delicate old piano recording-debussy. Maybe. You peek through the cracked door and see them curled up, eyes closed, letting the sound wash over them. And just like that, everything feels still, safe, whole. You walk back to your room, thinking about how time moves without asking permission. How your child, who once couldn't say spaghetti without adding an extra syllable, now debates Kafka and draws flamingo-themed comic strips about late-stage capitalism. You lie down, and you realize this has been the biggest I can't believe they just did that of all. Not the flamingos, not the paintball coup, not even the haunted Roomba soliloquy. It's that somehow, in the midst of everything, they've started becoming someone extraordinary. Not just because of the shocks, but because of how they keep surprising you with their heart, their resilience, their weird, unpredictable, glorious self. And just like that, the wild ride feels worth it. Now, as everything winds down your house quiet, the day fading out like the soft click of a lamp you breathe, let your body sink into the moment. Let your thoughts soften at the edges. Because no matter how many shockwaves your teen sends through your perfectly laid adult expectations, no matter how many times they leave empty ramen cups in their closet or tell you that your music is vintage, what lingers most is this, the quiet truth that they are trying, stumbling toward adulthood with that same wide-eyed audacity they had when they took their first steps. It's easy to forget how much bravery it takes to grow up, to test boundaries, to learn what parts of themselves are real and what parts are just glitter, stuck there from some forgotten mess. You've witnessed all of it somehow, through every bizarre experiment and microwave disaster. Your love has stayed, not always calmly, not always patiently, but always there. So tonight, let that be your final thought. Not the pranks, not the mess, not even the moment you walked in on them shading half their eyebrow to see what would happen. Remember instead the soft piano drifting from their room, the quiet note they left after a hard week, the flicker of something steady behind all that teenage noise. You're doing better than you think. So are they. Now close your eyes and rest. They'll be surprising you again tomorrow.